IVM.
Hey everybody, welcome to another week on the IVM Podcast Network. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Paytm Money Upfront. Guys, we're heading into week 2 of the lockdown, and I'm sure it's been challenging for all of you, just as it's been for us. We're doing our best to make sure that we maintain our schedules, but beg your indulgence if we slip. In the meantime, if you're looking for more stuff to listen to, might I suggest you go dive into the archives. We've got over 6,000 episodes of content we've created over the last 5 years, and I'm sure there's something in there that you'd love listening to. Anyway, stay safe, and let me get you started with your show.
You've tuned into a show called Mr. and Mrs. Binge-Watch, and you were expecting a spoiler-free episode. So there are many spoilers on this episode. Kripya dhyan dijiye.
Hi guys, this is Aniruddha and Janice, and this is a brand new episode of Mr. and Mrs. Binge-Watch. And as all of you know, these are different circumstances from the one that we are used to. Janice and I are recording this episode from our home, and there is a possibility that the audio quality may not be great. But that's just something that, with all the other things and all the other exceptions that we are making during this lockdown period, this is just one of those. But we still felt that we should bring an episode out. This is a time when everybody is locked in. And apart from all the time spent in doing household chores, there's obviously a lot more time, at least not for Janice and me, but I'm assuming for some of you, to consume new content.
And so as Mr. and Mrs. Binge-Watch, of course, we had to figure out a way to come back with regular programming and bring these episodes to you. A lot of you have been writing to us on Twitter, on Instagram, and on various other social media platforms that you're missing Mr. and Mrs. Binge-Watch. So firstly, thank you for the love and thank you for saying that you guys miss us. And the episode we're going to talk about today, rather the show we're going to talk about today is The Test on Amazon Prime. It's called The Test, a new era for Australia's team. It came out on 12th March, which means it came out barely less than a month ago. And of course, Guha and I have finished binge-watching it.
Yeah, look, and I'm a huge cricket fan. And it's really weird that just a week before we saw The Test, Janice and I sat down to watch Formula One Drive to Survive on Netflix, which is this other documentary about the F1 racing, Formula One team, various teams. In fact, every season of Formula One Drive to Survive is one entire season of Formula One racing. And, we found that to be an extremely thrilling and fun show to watch. I mean, I've been a bit of an F1 fan back in the day when Schumacher was racing, but I've sort of disconnected from the sport for the last few years. But even for somebody like Janice, who's never really watched F1, the way the documentary's been made, it's extremely thrilling, enticing. They also, unlike a lot of other sports documentaries, do not focus on any one team per se or any one player. They, sort of tell the story of an entire season, what happens with all the players, the points table and all of that. So F1 Drive to Survive was something that we really enjoyed watching, and I wasn't sure if Janice would be interested in watching The Test. It was something I was really looking forward to. But I think F1 Drive to Survive kind of whetted your appetite, didn't it, Janice?
The thing is that I think that the F1 Drive to Survive, firstly, just in general, after having watched both Drive to Survive and The Test, I feel like Formula One is slightly easier to understand because at the end of the day, you're talking about one racing team, you're talking about two drivers, and you're talking about the politics that goes on within a racing team, right? And also the matches are so quick. And again, anyone who's
the
races are so quick. It's pretty, you catch on pretty early on that this is more about the politics and human drama than really about technicalities of the sport.
No, but even then, I'm saying that every episode of Drive to Survive, if you remember, would always be centered around that one specific race. And while you're right, like what really hooked us was the human drama and the thrills and the fact that, they built up rivalry between racers and stuff like that. But I'm saying that when they cut to those races at the end of each episode, we were really invested in the races
Yeah.
because of the
Yeah.
backstories of each of the characters that we were sort of being introduced to.
Yeah, I mean, after we finished watching Drive to Survive, I think both of us had newfound respect for everyone who decides to A, put themselves in those cars, and B, more than the fact that you're risking your life in a sport, and risking your life, every episode, you're like, please don't have a crash, please don't have a crash, please don't have a crash.
Yeah.
Especially for the racers who you really start to like over the season, right? But more than that, it's also like, one, though you're putting yourself in that very risky position, but even outside of that, there's so much politics because there's just enough, there's just 2 players who can race, right, per team.
Yeah.
And there are only, 8 or 10 racing teams on an international level.
Yes.
So it's crazy the amount of cutthroat competition and risky business that's going on in that sport. But in the test, see, I'll tell you what. So first off, let me just say the test was amazing. I was pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed it. Though I have to put this as, sort of a disclaimer. Ideally, you should watch this show with someone who understands test cricket. Am I right, Guha? See, the thing is that you still, even if you don't watch it with someone who understands test cricket, you still will come off understanding the highs and lows of the Australian cricket team.
Yeah.
But the fact that I had Aniruddha, who is an absolute cricket fanatic, understands what is going on, or why this ball was important, why this, review is important, etc., just helped me understand and enjoy the show that much more. Do you want to give us, Ani, do you want to start off with a synopsis of what the test is about?
No, sure. So, just like, F1 Drive to Survive, there have been a bunch of great sports-based documentaries that have been coming out lately, right? Because streaming services allow you to really delve into a sport. So Amazon Prime, for example, came out with the Manchester City documentary last year. Then there was Drive to Survive. Then there was that Mumbai Indians documentary on Netflix that we saw. What makes the test so much more interesting than all these other, documentaries is that in all those cases, you had documentary filmmaking team following interesting teams and hoping for there to be drama. It's like a very basic tenet of documentary filmmaking, which is that you sort of don't ever go in with a script. Your script sort of organically kind of evolves during the course of shooting the documentary. The way the test stands apart from all these other documentaries is that the test is based around the time in Australian cricket right after the scandal broke out, where basically Cameron Bancroft, Steve Smith and David Warner had been banned for ball tampering.
Right.
So right at the outset, it's not like you are tracking Australian cricket at any random point of time or just before the World Cup. That in itself would have been very interesting. So following any team before a World Cup would be very interesting. But to follow a team which has just had a fall from grace, automatically, gives it such an interesting layer, right?
Yeah, from the first episode itself, that, this is going to be about really the phoenix rising from the ashes, or at least you hope it is, and pun intended on the ashes there, because, I just randomly said it, by the way.
Nice one.
Yeah, pat on the back. But no, I'm saying you're right. The fact that you're sort of watching the team at its lowest in the first episode, you know that there's only one way they can go from there. That's up, right?
Yeah, and I'm assuming when the documentary filmmakers started filming them, they wouldn't know the kind of results and that happens with any sport documentary. You don't know what results you're going to be getting. However, in a documentary like that at the very least, you will get great human drama. Because you're dealing with a bunch of cricketers who've been on the top of their game for so many years. Australians are known for their cricketing pride more than anything else. And now their pride has taken a big hit because the entire world, or at least the entire cricketing world, is referring to them as a bunch of cheaters. And so it's really about seeing how these guys will bounce back from such a big disaster, right?
An embarrassment. The thing is that, this was such a scandal that it didn't limit itself just to embarrassment within the cricketing world, right? It was, I remember, on the front page of most international publications. And because Steve Smith, even people like me, now, of course, because having been with Aniruddha now for 8 years, I have no choice but to watch a fair share of cricket in a year, and we play a lot of cricket. So Steve Smith is one of those guys who's already legendary, right? I mean, not maybe as much as a Virat Kohli, but I'm talking about among current players. He holds a very high spot in guys who's like, oh my God, this is a legend in the making.
No, in fact, he is. So there are 3 or 4 cricketers currently who are considered to be like the future, rather the young superstars of this generation. Virat Kohli is definitely the one on top currently because, he's just had great form. And if there is any cricketer in the world who is looked on as some sort of a competition to Virat Kohli, it was Steve Smith. And then there's Kane Williamson at New Zealand. And there is Joe Root in the England team. But Steve Smith, definitely among the 3 of them, is considered to be the closest competitor to Virat Kohli. And rightly so. Because Steve Smith is the only cricketer apart from Virat Kohli who has fantastic records in all 3 forms of the game, which is Test, ODIs and T20. Then he was again the young captain leading the Australian cricket team, just how Virat Kohli was, taking over from the mantle from a more senior cricketer. So while Virat
Kohli,
like Virat Kohli. So it's like 2 men who are on the top of their game, fiercely competitive, both leading teams which are like, which follow which have huge fan bases. So there's always that pressure to perform. And both of them killing it in their respective fields. So the moment the scandal broke out, it's like, the only analogy you can draw is that imagine if tomorrow Virat Kohli, Rohit Sharma and KL Rahul are just ousted from the overnight. Like there will be mayhem in the country,
My
right?
God, I think there will be riots in the street.
There won't be riots, but it's like the morale of the country would be like, for example...
Like Pakistan would celebrate.
No. Like, for example, when the match-fixing scandal broke out in 2000, we went through a very similar kind of upheaval. Mohammad Azharuddin, who was our captain, was banned. Ajay Jadeja, who was a pretty, sort of established middle-order player, was banned. A bunch of other smaller players were banned. But I'm saying at the end of the day, we also had to go through. So where we were in 2000, because Saurav Ganguly was then accidentally thrust into the role of the captaincy. And he was taking over a team where everybody was looking at us as this group of fixers. So in terms of the cricketing world, looking at a team, sort of as a shady side, there were some parallels, but the difference is that this is 2018, right? So you have video footage. You have that, they start the documentary on that very dramatic note of Cameron Bancroft removing that little, sort of sandpaper article to rub the ball with. So I'm saying that at the very outset, you have such an interesting setup that you are drawn into it. Now, if you're a cricket fan, you're anyway going to get all the other basic things that you would expect from a cricket documentary. Stuff about how coaches go about putting together teams, how do they select their players, what kind of training goes into preparing for a certain series, what kind of training goes into preparing for certain conditions. So, for example, if you're playing in India and you're playing on spinning tracks, then how are you adapting your technique as opposed to playing in a country like England or Australia where you're playing on pace-friendly tracks, and all the other drama that goes on behind the scenes. So all of that is in the test, and that is just so fascinating to watch because as a cricket fan, I feel like the footage that I saw on the test is just gold because I can't ever imagine being in those hallowed rooms with those people when they are having breakdowns or when they are celebrating. But in addition to that, the fact that they were coming back from such a setback had such an emotional undercurrent to the story is what made the test so interesting.
So the documentary has been also produced by Cricket Australia, which of course explains why the makers have such crazy access. The thing is that I was thinking back to when we did something similar with the Mumbai Indians, and the Ambanis allowed documentary filmmakers to come inside, and they also did a little bit of this, going inside, the changing room,
the dressing room
and all of that. And I remember the closest sort of emotional candid moment they got was after a match. All of them are, sprinkling, whatever, showering champagne everywhere and, putting throwing cakes in each other's faces. And there's just one moment with Akash Ambani, getting a cake in his face. That was the closest in terms of candid access and candid moment that these guys.
No, the Mumbai Indians documentary was terrible.
Yeah,
because I'm saying that even in terms of, you're right. So one of the major access that they got was that after every match they would have Coach Mahela Jayawardene and Captain Rohit Sharma basically telling them, oh, you did well, oh, you did badly. And it just went on in that loop. It's like you would watch a match, you would begin with preparation of them like going into the nets, then you would see a cricket match and then you would see how they are reacting so it was very predictable, and after a point that entire human side to it was lost.
Yeah, but
we never saw what happened, for example, in the hotel rooms after they lost a match.
Yeah.
What kind of conversations were the boys having with each other?
Or how did they relax? Like what I loved over here is, you're right, in the dressing room, after someone gets out or after someone at a pivotal moment in the match, after they get out, how do they come and react inside the dressing room? Whether they're breaking bats, they're screaming at themselves, or even
that is par for the course. But I'm saying, for example, if you remember, there was this one brilliant moment on the show where one of the matches at the when they were in England for the Ashes, and there was a day when cricket was rained out.
Yeah.
And they were all just goofing around in the room, and there was an entire portion about how Mitch Marsh is like the goof of the team, and he was doing that whole air guitar thing.
Yeah.
And then when the coach Justin Langer walked in, he just like sort of pretending to just practicing like shadow batting. I'm seeing that kind of footage. Or for example, how Adam Zampa and Marcus Stoinis are like coffee aficionados, and they like sort of make their own coffee, and they're like obsessed with making
coffee.
Coffee.
Theirs was a love story of a different kind. The way they showcase that friendship is beautiful. Also, I love the fact that, I don't know if a lot of you guys are doing it right now, but Aniruddha and I are playing a ton of rummy at home between the two of us. So it was nice to see that the Australian players also all play rummy in their respective hotel rooms as teams and as groups. And there's a lot of betting.
And there's a lot of bantering, and there's a lot of like... there's a lot of bantering, and there's also a lot of pulling each other's legs happening, which is really, really fascinating to watch. Also, when we look at certain aspects of the documentary, like for example, now Steve Smith, legendary cricketer, we've always known him to have these little weird things that he does at the crease. And then you've got the cricketers addressing the fact that he's a bit of a weird guy. And then you're cutting to all these shots of him doing shadow batting inside the dressing room, doing it at restaurants, at dinners, at lunches. And the fact that he is just this crazy student of the game.
He's always dying to play cricket.
And he's like a weird genius. Like his brilliance lies in the fact that he's slightly weird. And then you have this Manas Labuschagne character who idolizes him and is as weird as he is.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that there were these moments. You spoke about how Cricket Australia produced this documentary and gave them the access. I can assure you that any Indian documentary about Indian cricket will never be this good, because we will never be able to be this honest either in our interviews, like the way, say, Justin Langer was, or Steve Smith was, or David Warner was, when they were talking about the kind of, upheaval they went through, or in their depiction, like everything will be so sanitized.
I love the fact that I think for the first time, we've seen Virat Kohli's aggression on the field. And we've seen sometimes that as a captain, he can come across as cocky, as aggressive, as rude. This documentary actually, for the first time, I feel like I've never seen how other international cricketers would react to someone like a Virat Kohli who comes in with so much aggression. It's almost like he's on some sort of speed, and all of his team has to perform that the same way, right? They all have to be aggressive. They all have to have that body language has to be, what is that called? Sledging. They don't sledge, because I believe now that there are rules when it comes to how much you can
I liked about the fact that when they were talking about sledging, Justin Langer kept saying that the idea is to not abuse.
Yeah,
but banter is fine.
Yeah.
But keep the banter going.
Yeah, but don't abuse each other, and there's a thin line over there between banter and abuse.
And it's weird that actually, even while watching it, Virat Kohli came across as the bad guy.
Actually, more than anything else, he just comes across as childish and crass, because it's like even the Australian cricket team at their lowest, and I remember there's this match that they show where Tim Payne, who's the captain of the test side, finally stands up to Virat Kohli, who's being super aggressive during a test, And he does it in such a classy manner. It's like without abusing, without rude body language, just one statement and he's got him.
Yeah, but not like Australians don't have history of being abusive
we
themselves.
We will never forget Monkeygate.
But Monkeygate was
Yeah, but wasn't it with an Australian player?
Yeah, but we were at fault at Monkeygate.
I get it, but I'm saying over there also we remember, what is the name of the player?
Harbhajan Singh basically made Andrew Simons look like a monkey.
But Andrew Simons also came across as like really aggressive.
Yeah, he was extremely aggressive. But so Janice and I have during this lockdown period begun to do Instagram lives every Monday with other couples. So it's basically us talking to another couple about the things they are doing. We host it on Janice's Instagram page at 5 p.m. on Mondays. During one of those conversations, we spoke to one of our friends, Nakul Mehta, who's a TV actor, and he said that the test basically made him for the first time, when you're an Indian cricket fan and watching them play opponents, you're never really thinking about how the opponents are reacting to us.
Yeah.
And for the first time in that episode where you had Tim Payne in a really difficult situation in a test match against India, and you had Virat Kohli basically going after him for being a stand-in captain and, so just being a temporary guy who was made the captain of the Australian cricket team. And Tim Payne then standing up to him. And if you see it, because when you're watching the documentary and the Australian cricketers are the subject, you are actually rooting for them. For the first time in my life, while watching the Ashes, I always root for the English team. For the first time, I was rooting for Australians.
I was rooting for Australians even when they were playing
India.
India, especially because,
because they were the underdogs. The thing is, everyone loves an underdog story, and Australia has never been the underdog. This might be the first time in their lives that they're underdogs.
I just felt like we came across as so aggressively crass. Like we just came across as like with no class at all. And this is no offense to, because listen, in India, cricket is sort of, connected to patriotism. So I love cricket. I love our cricketers, and I love that are we still the number one?
We are number one in tests.
So great that we are number one, but I think we could, as an Indian cricket team, take a lesson or two in how to maintain your class on the field from the Australian cricket team, who literally, even at their lowest, will not fall to the tactics that we're sort of, falling for. But, Aniruddha and I would be doing a huge disservice while talking about this documentary if we did not talk about coach Justin Langer, who, according to me, is the real MVP of this series. He is just so good. Every comment, every statement.
Yeah, Justin Langer is he's a scene stealer.
Yeah.
Easy. Also, even in the Mumbai Indians documentary, I don't know how many of you have seen it on Netflix, more than Rohit Sharma, the guy who I absolutely was following on that show was Mahela Jayawardene. Because even there, he was the one leading the charge. He was the one creating, sort of game plans and addressing players either before or after a game. Here too, it was essentially Justin Langer who we first, who is sort of the Sutradhar, narrator, whoever you want to call it, the main guy who is being interviewed by the documentary, sort of filmmakers, because Justin Langer was brought in after the entire scandal broke out to revive Australian cricket, because at that point of time, Darren Lehman, their coach, was obviously asked to step down just as Steve Smith and David Warner were. So you bring in this guy called Justin Langer, an extremely solid guy, solid cricketer. Also, we need to remember, when Justin Langer was part of the Australian cricket team, that was considered to be the best Australian cricket team of all time. And even though Justin Langer in many ways is a legend and one of the best cricketers of the world himself, he was in a team that was made of superstars.
Yeah.
There was Ricky Ponting, there was Matthew Hayden, there was Adam Gilchrist, there was Shane Warne, there was Glenn McGrath. Now, when you're playing alongside these five greats, however great you might be, you are always going to be a little overlooked. It's not like you don't get the respect or people don't know how great you are. It's almost like when V.V.S. Lakshman was playing cricket alongside Sachin, Saurav and Rahul Dravid and Sehwag. While we knew the greatness of Lakshman, he never really got a similar kind of adulation. But I would, rate Justin Langer far above V.V.S. Lakshman. I would think Justin Langer is actually the Rahul Dravid of Australian cricket. He's that solid guy. And then you bring in, and of course, the first thing you're impressed by is his attitude, right? He wants he's been handled. So things could either go completely downside because, you've been handed a team where confidence is low, you're dealing with a scandal, performance has been hit, or they could go on the up, and you need amazing character and you need to be able to influence them. It's almost like he is a movie character. He's like Shah Rukh Khan in Chak De India, or
he's like Denzel Washington
in Remember the Titans. Remember the Titans. So he's that guy, and it's just amazing that Justin Langer is such a great personality, because you are so clued into what he's saying, and every time over a period of time, you see how he wins over the respect of each of the players. When he walks into a room, the way the players and their body language change because of his presence shows, and you can't manufacture that. You cannot, only a documentary is able to. I wonder if Ravi Shastri gets that kind of, I think in our team,
maybe 4 drinks.
No, I think in our team, Virat is the alpha and Ravi Shastri is just somebody who helps the captain along.
I think Ravi Shastri will be great for interviews. I just don't feel like he'll bring any character to it.
No, we don't know really. Again, until we really see what's happening behind the scenes, we don't know. So, it's unfair to say that Ravi Shastri has very little contribution. I'm just saying that between the two of them, over the years, this is a very clear rule of cricket, which is that you need one of the captain or the coach to take a active role. So, for example, that's what happened with Saurav Ganguly and Greg Chappell, right? Because with Saurav Ganguly and John Wright, Saurav Ganguly was the alpha. John Wright's job really was
like a
to
marriage.
Help the team along. Marriage, partnership, whatever you want to call it.
One will always be an alpha in most situations.
Yeah, and with Greg Chappell and Ganguly, it's like there were two alphas trying to, outdo each other, and that's what led to our, poor performance during that time. Here, Justin Langer is clearly the alpha.
Yeah.
He's fantastic, and you got to watch the test if you're a cricket fan, because you get great cricket, you get great behind the scenes footage, and you get to see a team, you get to see what it means to be a sports person in a country like Australia, where expectations are high, and how you bounce back from from a low point. And that's what great sporting stories are made of, right?
You also get to see how the Brits are absolute pieces of trash. First Brexit, then their shitty way of handling the coronavirus.
Britain.
Then their prime minister, whatever. Their government is a joke. I know we can't say much, but you know what I'm saying.
No, but also,
and on top of that, they're just shitty assholes.
Britain has always had a poor sporting sort of a how do I call it? Not culture, but in the sense that, at least for me and for a lot of people I know, people really root for England to lose, whether it's cricket, whether it's football.
They just feel very harami-like.
Yeah, they are harami-like, but right now, of course, it's weird that 5 years ago, where Australian cricket was, England cricket is there right now. And Australian cricket is, of course, still finding its roots, but the test really gives you a sense of what it means to be on the down low and how you rise through the ranks. So definitely check test out. Our rating on the Binge-o-meter for the test, I would say the test is like a one-day international cricket match. It's not a T20 match where things happen at a really fast pace, but at the same time, it's also not a test match where the story takes forever to unfold. The entire 8-part series has been built like an ODI match where it starts off on a high note, and then you get into the middle episodes where you're just sort of building on the great start, and then it again explodes on a high. So it's almost like how you build an ODI cricket innings. It's like 50 overs of a ODI match.
And वैसे भी guys, you're all sitting at home. What other earth-shattering work
are you doing?
Apart
from doing jhadu, bartan, katka, cooking, which Janice and I are doing. And actually, everyone tuning in should know this, that even though we are Mr. and Mrs. Binge-Watch, our binge-watching has taken a severe hit ever since the lockdown has begun.
But more on that in the next episode.
And we will, however, try and bring you as many recommendations as possible. This is Janice and Aniruddha signing off, and we'll see you next week with yet another episode of Mr. and Mrs. Binge-Watch.
Are you constantly seeking happiness? Wondering how to make the most of every day? How not to let your inhibitions stop you from achieving your goals? It's now time to get your A game on. It's time to unlock your true potential. Tune in to the Empowering series with me, Zarina Poonawalla, to feel empowered in all genres of life. From behavioral skills to management skills. From health to relationships. From mental well-being to emotional well-being. And of course, your finances. I've got you covered. With these tips and tricks from me, Zarina, and true life stories from my amazing guests, you're bound to bring your purest to the table. Tune in to the Empowering series with Zarina Poonawalla every Thursday on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Advertising is dead. Yep, you heard me right. Advertising is dead. We're all in the content business now. Let's not call it news, TV, radio, etc., etc. It's all content, and we're in the middle of this weirdly exciting phase where all the borders and lines that have been drawn over decades has been swept away by this lovely thing called the internet. We're a show where we don't dwell on just the stuff that is now, but rather the wider stuff about advertising, media, content, and the whole goddamn circus surrounding it. Tune in every Tuesday for our weekly unboxing of the mystery box we used to call advertising. I'm Varun Dugirala, co-founder and content chief at The Glitch, and this is my new podcast, Advertising is Dead.